Alright, so before we start working in Illustrator, we're going to learn a few basic tools and the layout of Illustrator. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my app and select File from the menu bar. Notice it says Illustrator CC. I'm going to select here and go New. And then I'm going to title this document No Bull Flyer 1. Alright, and in the future, if you want to make multiple flyers, you can change the number of artboards to add artboards to your page. In this case, you're just making one flyer, so we're going to make one artboard. You're going to keep the size at letter, and the width is going to stay at 8.5 inches, and the height is going to stay at 11 inches. If yours says points, don't fear. You can click right here and change it from points or picas to inches, where it says units. Alright, and my flyer that I want to create is standing right side up, so it's in what you call a portrait view. You can change yours to a landscape view by clicking on the next little icon with a small guy in it. So portrait, landscape, whatever orientation you want, and click OK, and that's all you need to do for that. And there's my artboard. So the first thing I'm going to show you is the layout of Illustrator, so that you know where to find everything and what all of these buttons mean. So up here you have what's called your menu bar. Menu bar has your normal things like your file, edit, object. We're going to be working a lot in window today. Notice all of these cool little windows it has here for you in Illustrator. The next thing you need to know is your control or options panel. Right here you have the ability to change colors. You have your stroke, which is like your outline. You can change the thickness of your stroke, of either your letters or whatever shape it is that you create. Just to give you an example, I'll make a rectangle. And notice it's white on the inside. I'm going to click here to change the color. And then it has a black outline around it, as you can tell. But it's 1 point, so I can make it thicker. Oh, sorry. I can make it thicker to make it more distinct. I can make it smaller. Okay, so I'm going to bring that back down to 1. Actually, no, I'll increase it to 11. And I'm going to change the color so you can see it. So that's what all of this means. In case you're wanting to change your stroke line, you can change it from a uniform to doing some really wacky things here. You can have a lot of fun with that, so that's completely up to you. Something I love about Illustrator is that you can change the opacity of a picture. So if you select here, you can use this little opacity slider, and it's all the way at 100. You can bring it down to about 50. And notice it makes it a little bit more transparent. So if you want to have something transparent in your background, kind of like a watermark that you see in pictures sometimes, you can do that as well. So that's what opacity is for. That's all I want to show you right now in the options or control panel. The reason it's called the options or control panel is because it changes depending on whatever tool you have selected. So I had the shape tool selected, so it gave me all the options for the shape tool. If I changed it to the type tool, and then I went ahead and made a text box right there, notice it changes now for my text. So it's going to automatically make it black on the inside with no stroke, because then it gets really hard to read when you start adding a stroke, unless you use it for a title. And then you can increase the stroke here as well, but I don't want to do that. I do want to make my text larger though, so I'm going to increase the font size. As you can see, if you hover over any one of these options, a little tool guide is going to pop up to tell you what each of these things are. So I'm going to increase the font size to about 27. And I'm going to change my font to something a little bit more fun, and then I'll type in no bullying. Now if I want to change where it's placed, I can go here to paragraph, and I can center a line, or I can right a line, I can justify, and see I'm going to paste it right underneath. So that's basically it for that. I just wanted to let you know that the control and the options bar are completely determined by whatever tool you click over here in what's called the toolbox, or also known as the tools panel. We'll get to the tools panel in just a second. I want to show you something else though. Something over here, this is called the side panels over here to the right. And if you click this little arrow, it'll expand the panels. And if you bring it back, it'll collapse the panels to hide them, which is always helpful whenever you need a lot of room to work with. But over here in your side panels, you have, or you should have, what's called layers. If you don't see a panel that you want over here, you can always find it in your window option on the menu bar. So I can't find my layers. They're right there. I'm going to click it, and it's going to bring up the option for layers, and I'm just going to click and drag that layers panel in here so I can have it, and I'll move it up here, organize it how I see best fit. Okay, I'm going to bring this out a little bit more so you can see that. So your layers panel is very important to what you do here in Illustrator, because you'll want to keep this organized. So notice here in my layer 1, I have my layer for text and type right here. If I click the I button, it'll make it go away. Let me actually get off of that. There you go. It'll make it go away. Like if it wasn't even there, it'll hide it. Notice here you have these blank spaces. Well, in there is the option to lock a layer. I wouldn't suggest doing this, going crazy with locking layers. No one's gonna come in and steal all of your layers. But you can click there and lock it, and that will not allow you to touch it at all. So I'm clicking on this and I can't edit it at all. This is helpful if you have a background that you want to keep in place that you don't want to keep moving. You can lock it, and so that you can just keep working on top of it as if it's permanent. You can also unlock it and then continue editing as well. So there you have the text layer, there you have the rectangle layer, and then the layer that holds them both. I want to show you, if I'm selected on a shape, notice it will highlight that layer, and then it'll highlight the sub layer that you are currently working on. So it'll have a little blue square on the very right of it, and then a blue square at the very right of that layer. This is also helpful whenever you're working and you have a billion layers and you're lost. Just click on what you want to be working on, and if you need to find it in your layers panel, you can just look for the little blue dot. Notice also in your layers panel that you can click on something and there's a little trash can. You can delete that selection. So if I don't want that rectangle anymore, I can just delete it. If I want to add a new layer, then I can add a new layer, and I can title this one background. And so now what I'm going to do is get a big rectangle and make a background, but it's covering up my text and I don't want that. I want to see the layer with my type on it. So I'm going to take this layer and then move it down to where my text is in front. Okay, so now I can play with this and place it wherever I need to. Something I want to show you before I move on is in your Windows drop-down menu, you have these 4 panels right here, your application frame, which is over here, and then you have your control panel, which is up here, the one we discussed earlier, and then you have your tools panel, which is over here. So if I want to hide one of these, or if I can't find one of these, let's hide this one first, and then if I want to find it again, I can choose it and it'll be right there. So in case you're ever missing one of these panels, you can just go into Window and click the drop down menu and find it there. The next thing I want to talk to you about is your tools panel. Now your tools panel, you have 2 options on the way you can view it. You can click this little collapse arrow and it'll make it a single panel across. Then here you have the double panel. So a few basic tools you're going to need to know are the selection tool, the direct selection tool, and the pin tool. Those are very, very basic. The type tool, you'll be very familiar with. It's just like it is in Word, but you can modify your text a lot easier. Notice though that whenever I hover over a tool, it gives me the name of that tool as well as the letter in parentheses. Now what that is a shortcut. If I click V without having touched, if I'm right here and I click V on my keyboard, it'll automatically pull up my selection tool. Same thing with any one of these tools. So let's say I wanted to select my pen tool, I can click P and select the pen tool. Same thing with the direct selection tool. I can select A, and the type tool I can select T. So those are all different shortcuts you could use that make it a lot easier for you. It's also a lot more efficient whenever you get to working and you need a tool really fast. You can just click the letter as opposed to going and finding it on the toolbox. Also, with some tools, you'll see a little arrow in the corner. That means that there's more tools within that one little icon. So I'm gonna hold this down, and it's gonna bring a flyout menu. This little square says I have selected the pen tool. You also have the option for add anchor point tool, delete anchor point, and then anchor point tool. Same thing here. You have group selection, direct selection, the type tool. You can type on a path, do vertical type on a path tool. This one has a rounded rectangle, ellipse tool, polygon, star, flare, and so on. You have a lot of different options in these too. Different lines, arc, spiral. And then you can change the stroke of that. And increase the stroke of that as well. So you can do some really cool stuff in here. Let me get rid of that. So more about the toolbox. Here you have your fill option, and you can change the fill color that way. So for example, I'm going to draw another rectangle, and then right now it's filled with red because of this. This little arrow right here is what's called the toggle arrow, and X is a shortcut for that. So you can click that and it'll toggle the colors back and forth. So now you have a red outline and a bluish purple center. Okay, so you have two different ways to fill an object in. You can fill it in with the fill box down here, or you can use the swatch panel up here and use any one of these swatches to fill it in. You have a cool little gradient tool, the pattern tool, all of that. And that's it for the basic layout of Illustrator. We'll get more in depth with this program in future tutorials.